Okay, Jason, let's talk playoff matchups here. We'll start with our favorite. And I think we're going to agree on the first. I'm not sure we'll agree on set 2, 3, 4, and 5. But if it was up to the Cavs, who would they want? Who should they? And obviously you can't tank or win certain games. It's such a cluster, you know what, in the Eastern Conference standings. But who should the Cavs want to face in the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs?
If I'm going to be totally honest with you, none of those teams right now I feel good about.
There's one I feel good about.
Well, you go first, and I'll tell you why I don't like it, because whatever you pick, I'm not going to like. But you go first.
The team, if it was up to me that they had to play, is Indiana. Like, you have to want to play Indiana. Tyrese Halliburton's been a shell of himself since the injury. He's averaging 17 and 10 since he got hurt. He's shooting 31% from the floor. I don't trust Pascal Siakam to be a go-to scorer if Halliburton's not. And yes, they like to run, but their defense is non-existent. I'm not saying I'd pick them in a sweep, but I don't like Indiana very much as they limp to the stretch as well. So that's the team I would feel most comfortable playing if I was the Cavs in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to pick one, that's the one. The reason I don't like Indiana is because they play fast and they can score a ton of points. And I don't know that the Cavs can win a shootout series if that's what it comes to, which again goes back to the defensive principles that we were talking about earlier. If you make me pick one of these teams, it's going to be Indiana. And I would probably pick them to beat Indiana in the series, but I don't love any of these matchups right now with the way the Cavs are playing. Indiana and Orlando are the two that you would circle that you would probably have the most faith in, I think. But you're right. Orlando's great defensively. I think they're better than people think. I think they're sneaky good. They got length to them. But that's a team that's never really been there. So, maybe you could take advantage of that a little bit. Orlando does not have much of a home court advantage, at least when I was covering the league. They didn't. So it's not like they're going to blow you out of the arena with noise and fan support and everything else. So, if from that perspective, you might like them. So, I mean, Indiana, Orlando are probably the two teams you would most like to face, but I don't think either one of them's a given. I think both of them would.
Yeah, Orlando's good. And Jason froze. If you're in the chat, Jason's back. Okay, yeah, your last second cut out there, Jason. But Orlando's good, and they have two elite defenders. Jalen Suggs might be the best guard defender in all of basketball. And Jonathan Isaac, he only plays 20 minutes a game. He is the single best defensive player in all of basketball. He can stop guards. He can stop centers. He is the most elite of elite guys. He just can't stay healthy. That's a matchup that scares me just from a physicality standpoint. But, Jason, I'm going to give you a little curveball here. Obviously, Indiana is the team I want to play. I think that's the best matchup for the Cavs. If it's not the Indiana Pacers, I actually want to play the New York Knicks. And there's a reason why. And I understand, and I see you rolling your eyes, and I can't tell if that's on delay.
I didn't roll.
I can't tell if that's on
delay.
No,
I didn't roll my eyes.
That's in response to my Knicks comment. But, hey, two things. One, it's a chance at revenge. We're going to get a chance to see the mental makeup of every single player on this Cavs roster who was here last year. Do you have any semblance of a dog in you? Yes or no? If you do, there's no better place and no better opportunity to prove that than in another first-round series against New York, a rematch of last year's 4-1 throbbing, upset loss, however you want to describe it. The lights were too bright. There is no better opportunity to give yourself a little redemption, to prove you're not as soft as you were characterized as after that series. There's no better way to create some buzz and create some energy around this team than avenging the loss that, frankly, I think set this franchise back a year or two, Jason, when you look at it from the big picture, and we'll get to that way later down the road. But that was a stumbling block that they did not anticipate in week one or in year one. I also want the smoke. It's New York. It's MSG. That's the brightest of lights. That's the biggest of stages. And maybe Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen don't want the bright lights, but I want to learn real quick. We got Boston in the second round if it's the 4-5 matchup. That's going to be a colossal, and I mean a colossal task to knock off the Boston Celtics. But if we're going to have any chance of making any type of noise, you have to prove that you can beat a New York team that doesn't have Julius Randle. You don't know about OG Anunoby. Jalen Brunson has been phenomenal, but guess what? As good as Jalen Brunson is, I don't think at the end of the day he's a better player than Donovan Mitchell. That's a series where a healthy Donovan, and health is the key word there, would be the best player in that series. I'm not saying I'd pick the Cavs. I'm not saying I'd pick the Knicks. I got to see how these next three games play out. But, Jason, that is a team just like Cleveland who is limping to the stretch and dealing with injuries. And I understand Tibbs And I understand the mental aspect of New York last year is still lingering across the entire Cavs organization right now. But I don't want to duck from the smoke. Like, if it's not Indiana, I'd much rather play New York than have to deal with an Orlando team that's a complete unknown. Or hell, I definitely don't want to see Embiid, and I don't want anything to do with Miami. So maybe this is by elimination of options, but I think New York's actually the second team I'd want to play if I have my choice of first-round opponents for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Two things. Number one, I think they are that soft. We saw it with Russ Westbrook after the game the other night, sort of taunting the bench. Who's the only one that did anything about it? Tristan. Tristan's the only one that stepped forward, that walked forward, and is like, man, shut up and get out of here. He's the only one. The rest of them didn't make a move. And I just think that this is just who they are. Like, they've proven it. They've told us time and again that's who they are. I don't think that they're a very tough team, quite frankly. But I also don't think that New York is 4-1 better than the Cavs. Like, in a 5-game series, New York should not win 4 – or in a 7-game series, New York should not win 4-1. Like, they're not that much better. Yeah. I don't believe. So, I don't know. I mean, I told you last year I didn't like that matchup, that Cavs-Knicks matchup, because the Knicks are so much more physical and they can dominate the boards, and that's still the case. So I tell you right now, if it's a Knicks Cavs series, I'm probably picking the Knicks again, because I don't think much has changed from last year. But I like where you're going with it. Like, you know, I don't think it ends in 5 again this year. You know, I think the Cavs, they better get more than 1 in a rematch this time around. But I just don't love that matchup, Randall or no Randall. I don't know that they are good enough to compete with the Knicks on the glass in a 7-game series.
And that's totally fair. And I understand that none of these are, frankly, great matchups, right? Like, Orlando, I don't think is a great matchup on paper. They're big, they're long, their guards are physical. And once again, I don't think the Cavs are the toughest mentally or physical team on the block. But if this goes south, let's say they lose a first-round series to whoever they play, Jason, we're going to have a lot of questions for every single player on this roster. And one question we may not be able to answer if it's against Orlando or Indiana or someone else is, all right, who's tough enough that they could be a building block and a cornerstone for this franchise with Donovan or without Donovan? And I know for sure if they have to go up against the Knicks again, we're going to find out one way or the other who's kind of has that internal dog in them. And I want that answer, because I think I know how I feel about most of these guys. I have my opinion as of, what's today, April 9th. But if I'm making a decision on the long term, what's best for this franchise, I need a little more data to back up and confirm what I believe at this point. And I don't think there's any better way to get that confirmation than a rematch against New York. And if New York, by the way, was 16-2 in their last 18 games like they were in March, I want nothing to do with them. They also happen to be playing a little bit of a they've hit a little slump here, and some injuries have taken their toll. So for those two reasons,
is anyone in the East playing well outside of Boston? Like, no. Boston's playing well. Is anybody else? No. Nobody else is.
No, it's disgusting. Milwaukee, there might not be
the whole East is imploding.
That wins 50 games outside of Boston. Seriously, 50 games.
That's crazy.
Place in the East. So
that's crazy.
It is what it is. If you're in the chat, let us know what you think. Who would you most want to play? Actually, no, screw that. If you would want to play the Knicks in the first round, give us a 1. If you want nothing to do with the Knicks in the playoffs, give us a 2. But give us a 1 if you want to see the Knicks, a 2 if you want nothing to do with the Knicks.